As I stood there, the weight of betrayal crashed over me like a tidal wave. The laughter that echoed in my mind was no longer a sweet melody, but a haunting reminder of the trust I had placed in her and in him. It was a typical Friday night when I stumbled upon the truth. I was supposed to be at the office late, working on an urgent project. But as I finished up, a nagging feeling pulled at my gut, compelling me to stop by our favorite bar, a cozy place where the lights dimmed just enough to make the world outside fade away. Walking in, I expected to see my wife, Claire, sitting at the bar, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders, a drink in hand and laughter dancing on her lips. I expected to see my friend, Mark, behind the counter serving drinks with his usual charm. Instead, what I saw shattered my world. There they were, side by side, leaning in too close, whispering to each other, their laughter mingling like a sickening melody that twisted a knife in my heart. I froze at the entrance, my breath caught in my throat. The way she looked at him, her eyes sparkling, her smile wide, was a sight I never wanted to witness. In that moment, anger and despair coursed through me like a raging storm. Trust, once the bedrock of our relationship, crumbled beneath my feet. I had shared countless nights with Mark, laughing and joking, believing we were brothers. I had shared my life with Claire, believing she was my partner, my confidant. But now, they were sharing something else entirely, something that felt like a betrayal of epic proportions. I could still see the way she smiled at him, a smile meant for me, a smile that felt like a dagger twisting deeper with every passing second. I wanted to scream, to confront them right there, but fear and confusion paralyzed me. Instead, I backed away, feeling like a ghost in my own life, leaving the bar with my heart pounding in my chest and my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. The drive home was a blur. Betrayal clawed at my insides, and I could hardly focus on the road. I replayed the scene over and over again in my mind, trying to piece together how everything had gone so wrong. I thought of the nights we had spent together, the dreams we had shared, and the future I had envisioned. It all felt like a cruel joke now, a fantasy shattered by the reality of her infidelity. When I finally got home, the silence was deafening. I could feel the weight of my anger pressing down on me, pushing me to act. I had to confront her, but I also knew that I had to think this through. This was not just about Claire. It was about Mark too. He had betrayed me as much as she had. My mind raced as I considered my options. The betrayal ignited a fire within me, a determination to take action. I needed to make sure that Mark faced the consequences of his actions. He had taken something from me that I could never get back. I could not let him continue to roam free, especially not in the places that had once been our sanctuaries. I would ensure that he was banned from every bar in town, a ghost in the nightlife that had once been our shared sanctuary. The decision solidified in my mind like a steel trap closing shut. I would not let her escape the consequences of her actions, nor would I allow him to continue to haunt my life. A plan began to form, and with each passing moment my resolve grew stronger. I would take control of this situation, and I would make sure they both understood the price of betrayal. Looking back on it now, I realize how naive I was to think that our relationship was unshakable. Claire and I had been together for nearly a decade, and in that time we built a life filled with shared dreams and laughter. We met in college, where our bond blossomed over late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about our hopes and fears. She was my first love, the one who stood by me during tough times, and I thought I was doing the same for her. We had our routines, weekend brunches at our favorite cafe, Friday nights at the bar, and spontaneous road trips whenever we could manage. It was a cozy life, one that felt secure and predictable. I thought I knew everything about her, including her friendships. Mark had been a part of our lives for years. He was more than just a bartender. He was a friend. We would joke about everything from sports to politics, sharing camaraderie over drinks and laughter. I trusted him implicitly, and that trust made the betrayal all the more painful. When I think of that night, I remember the warmth of the bar, the smell of whiskey and beer, and the way the dim lights created an intimate atmosphere. It was supposed to be our happy place, a sanctuary where we could escape the stresses of life. Instead, it had become the stage for a betrayal that would change everything. The image of Claire and Mark together, their laughter echoing in my mind, would not leave me. The thought of it burned in my chest like a slow, relentless fire. The next morning I could hardly look at her. Claire was oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside me as she prepared breakfast, humming a soft tune. I wanted to scream, to confront her with the truth I now knew, but I held back. I needed to think clearly. I needed to plan. As I sat across from her at the kitchen table, the smell of coffee filled the air, but all I could taste was bitterness. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes filled with genuine concern. The question cut deeper than any knife. How could she be so unaware, so innocent after what I had seen? "Yeah, just tired," I replied, forcing a smile that felt like a mask over my true feelings. I couldn't let her see the storm raging inside me, not yet. As the day wore on, I found myself pacing the living room, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. I needed to act, but how? I could confront Mark directly, but that felt too easy, too confrontational. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions without giving him a chance to apologize or explain. No, I needed a more calculated approach. I began to consider my connections in the local bar scene. Over the years, I had made acquaintances with several bar owners and managers, often chatting with them while enjoying a drink. I could leverage those connections to ensure Mark faced consequences for his betrayal. That evening, I decided to pay a visit to one of the bars where Mark worked most frequently. It was a popular spot downtown, known for its vibrant atmosphere and craft cocktails. As I walked in, the familiar sounds of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, but I felt detached from it all. I spotted the manager, a guy named Dave, chatting with a few patrons. He recognized me immediately and waved me over. "Hey man, good to see you. How's it going?" he asked, his smile warm and inviting. I forced a smile back, but my heart was racing. "Actually, I need to talk to you about something serious," I said, lowering my voice as I leaned closer. Dave's expression shifted to one of concern. "Sure, what's up?" I hesitated for a moment, the weight of my words heavy on my tongue, but I knew I had to push through. "It's about Mark. I don't know if you've heard, but he's been involved in some shady stuff. I think he's been taking advantage of people, especially women." Dave raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I launched into a carefully crafted story, one that painted Mark as irresponsible and untrustworthy. I spoke of rumors I had heard, of his late-night escapades and questionable behavior with patrons. I exaggerated the details just enough to make it believable, ensuring that Dave would take me seriously. As I spoke, I could see the gears turning in Dave's mind. He was a businessman after all, and the last thing he wanted was trouble in his bar. By the time I finished, I could tell I had planted a seed of doubt about Mark. "I'll look into it," Dave said, his tone serious. "Thanks for bringing this to my attention." I left the bar feeling a mix of triumph and guilt. I had taken my first step toward revenge. The plan was fragile, yet it felt like a necessary move in the face of the betrayal I had suffered. I knew I had to keep pushing forward. Mark would pay for what he had done, and I would ensure that Claire would feel the consequences too. The days that followed my conversation with Dave felt like an emotional roller coaster. I was caught between the thrill of executing my plan and the gnawing guilt that came with my betrayal of Mark. Part of me felt justified. After all, he had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. But another part of me, the part that had once considered him a friend, struggled with the weight of my actions. I reminded myself that this was about more than just revenge. It was about restoring my dignity and making sure Claire understood the consequences of her infidelity. I watched Claire closely during those days, noting the little things she did that I had once found endearing. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was deep in thought, the way she laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny, the way she made breakfast every morning without fail. All of it felt tainted now, like a beautiful painting splattered with mud. I wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I focused on my plan, determined to make Mark pay. The following weekend, I decided to pay a visit to another bar where Mark occasionally worked. It was a smaller place, more intimate, and had a loyal clientele that adored him. I had learned from my previous visit that Mark was well liked, which made my task all the more difficult. But I was committed. I had to ensure that he felt the consequences of his betrayal, and I would not stop until I achieved that. I walked in, scanning the room for familiar faces. The ambience was cozy, with dim lighting and soft music playing in the background. I spotted Mark behind the bar, mixing drinks and chatting with patrons. He looked relaxed and carefree, completely unaware of the storm brewing around him. My stomach churned with anger as I watched him laugh and joke, his charm working its magic on everyone around him. I approached the bar, forcing a smile as I took a seat. I ordered a drink, trying to appear casual, but my heart raced as I prepared to execute the next phase of my plan. I needed to talk to the owner of this bar, a woman named Lisa who was known for her no-nonsense approach. I had met her a few times before and knew that she valued her establishment's reputation above all else. After a few minutes of small talk, I casually brought up Mark. "You know, I've heard some troubling things about him," I said, leaning in closer to Lisa as if sharing a deep secret. "I think you should be careful with him. He's not the kind of guy you want representing your bar." Lisa raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" I launched into another carefully constructed tale, this time focusing on how Mark had a reputation for flirting with customers and crossing boundaries. I painted him as a liability, someone who could bring unwanted trouble to her establishment. As I spoke, I could see doubt creeping into her expression. "I appreciate you telling me this," she said after I finished. "I'll definitely keep an eye on him. We can't afford any drama here." Leaving the bar, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I was gaining momentum. I had successfully sown the seeds of distrust in 2 establishments, and I knew that word would spread. Mark's carefree days behind the bar were numbered. In the following days, I continued my campaign. I reached out to other bar owners I knew, sharing my concerns about Mark, embellishing the stories as needed to ensure they took me seriously. Each conversation felt like a small victory, but I was also reminded of the collateral damage my actions would cause. Claire loved the nightlife, and these bars were her favorite spots. I was ensuring that her world would be turned upside down, and part of me felt guilty for making her suffer. But then I reminded myself of the betrayal. I thought of her laughter with Mark, the way she had looked at him with affection that should have been reserved for me. My anger surged, and I pushed the guilt aside. I had to focus on the end game. One night, after a particularly draining day of plotting, I returned home to find Claire waiting for me. She looked concerned, her brow furrowed. "You've been acting distant lately. Is everything okay?" I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to confess everything. I wanted to tell her how I felt, to confront her about the affair, but I couldn't. Instead, I feigned a smile. "Just busy with work, you know how it is." Her expression softened, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I hated the fact that I was lying to her, but I reminded myself that this was all part of the plan. I had to keep her in the dark while I executed my revenge. As the weeks passed, I continued my efforts, and I could sense the walls closing in around Mark. He started to notice the changes. I saw the confusion on his face when he was called into the manager's office, and I felt a twisted satisfaction at the sight. Each time I learned that another bar had decided to cut ties with him, my heart raced with a mix of triumph and dread. I was playing a dangerous game, and I knew that the consequences for Claire would soon follow. The moment of reckoning arrived faster than I anticipated. I remember the day vividly. It was a Saturday, and Claire had planned a night out with her friends at a new bar that had just opened. I had seen the excitement in her eyes when she mentioned it, a flicker of joy that felt like a betrayal in itself. She had no idea that I was orchestrating the downfall of the very world she loved so much. As the evening approached, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew that Mark had already been banned from 2 bars, and rumors had begun to circulate among the local nightlife circle. The word was out, and I could sense that his reputation was slipping. I had done everything I could to ensure that he would no longer be welcome in the places where Claire spent her nights. Still, part of me worried about how she would react to the news. Would she confront me? Would she side with him? I decided to stay home that night, feigning illness so I wouldn't have to join her. While she got ready, I paced the living room, my heart pounding as I imagined the conversations she would have with her friends. I envisioned her excitement turning to confusion and then to anger as they revealed the truth about Mark. I was ready for the fallout, but nothing could prepare me for the storm that would follow. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, I received a text from one of Claire's friends. "You won't believe what just happened. Mark got kicked out of the new bar. Claire is furious." The message sent a shiver down my spine. I felt a rush of adrenaline at the thought of my plan coming to fruition, but I also felt a pang of guilt for what it would mean for Claire. Moments later, Claire burst through the door, her face flushed with anger. "You won't believe what just happened," she shouted, her voice a mix of disbelief and fury. "Mark got banned from the bar tonight. They said he was inappropriate with a customer." I held my breath, pretending to be surprised. "What, are you serious?" I feigned shock, though inside I was reveling in the chaos I had orchestrated. "Yes, I can't believe it. He was always so nice to us. I can't believe he would do something like that." Her voice trembled with emotion, and I could see the betrayal washing over her face. "Maybe you should talk to him," I suggested, trying to sound sympathetic while fighting back the urge to reveal everything. "Talk to him? I can't even look at him right now." She snapped, her frustration evident. "I thought he was my friend. How could he do this?" Her anger was palpable, and I felt a thrill of satisfaction. This was only the beginning. I had carefully planned every step, and now the pieces were falling into place. As the night wore on, Claire's emotions shifted from anger to despair. She sat on the couch, head in her hands, and I could hear her muffled sobs. Part of me felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly buried it under the weight of my own feelings of betrayal. I wanted her to understand the pain she had caused. I wanted her to know that her choices had consequences. After what felt like hours, Claire finally looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. "What should I do? I can't believe he would do something so stupid." I took a deep breath, knowing that this was my moment to guide the conversation. "You need to think about who you can trust," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Maybe it's time to reevaluate your friendships." Claire looked at me, confusion mixed with hurt in her eyes. "What do you mean?" I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I just think you deserve better than someone who would betray your trust like that. You deserve friends who have your back, not ones who take advantage of you." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I could see the gears turning in her mind, the realization slowly dawning on her. I had planted the seeds of doubt about Mark, and now it was time for them to take root. Over the next few days, Claire's mood shifted dramatically. She started distancing herself from Mark, her texts and calls dwindling to nothing. I watched as she unfollowed him on social media and deleted his number from her phone. My heart raced at the sight of her taking control, but it was bittersweet. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was manipulating her, that I was the puppet master pulling the strings. But in my mind, it was justified. I was protecting her from someone who had shown his true colors. I was helping her see the reality of her choices, and I convinced myself that she would thank me for it one day. One night, as we lay in bed together, I felt the tension between us. I could sense that Claire was still grappling with her feelings about Mark, and I knew I had to address it. "Are you okay?" I asked, turning to face her. She sighed, her gaze distant. "I just can't believe I trusted him. It feels like everything has changed." I reached out to comfort her, but my heart raced with the knowledge that I had played a role in that change. "You'll get through this. You're stronger than you think," I said, trying to reassure her. But deep down, I knew that I was the reason her world had been turned upside down. I had orchestrated this chaos, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. The fallout from my actions was starting to weigh heavily on me, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I had made my choice, and there was no turning back now. I had to see this through to the end. As the weeks rolled on, the dust began to settle, but the emotional fallout from my actions was far from over. Claire had distanced herself from Mark entirely, and I could see the toll it was taking on her. She seemed more withdrawn, her laughter replaced by a quiet sadness that weighed heavily on my heart. I had achieved what I set out to do, and yet the victory felt hollow. I had expected to feel satisfaction, a sense of triumph over the betrayal, but all I felt was an aching emptiness. One evening, as we sat together on the Couch, I noticed her scrolling through her phone, her expression distant. Are you still thinking about Mark? I asked gently, bracing for her response. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. I don't know, I guess I just can't shake the feeling of betrayal. It's hard to believe someone I thought was a friend could do that. I nodded, my heart heavy with a mix of sympathy and guilt. You deserve friends who respect you. You shouldn't have to worry about someone taking advantage of you. Her gaze dropped back to her phone, and for a moment I felt a pang of regret. I had pushed her away from someone who had once been a friend, and now she was left with a void that I wasn't sure I could fill. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my actions had consequences beyond just Mark's banishment from the bars. Claire was struggling to cope with the fallout, and I was left feeling like a stranger in my own home. I tried to be supportive, but the weight of my deception hung over me like a dark cloud. I was trapped in a web of my own making, and I didn't know how to escape it. One night after a particularly tense dinner, I decided to confront the situation head-on. "Claire, can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. I needed to know where we stood, and I had to be honest with her about my role in everything. She looked at me, her expression guarded. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened with Mark, and I want to be honest with you." Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. "What do you mean?" "I was the one who talked to the bar owners about him," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I told them things that weren't entirely true because I wanted him to pay for what he did to us." Claire's expression shifted from confusion to shock, and I could see the betrayal in her eyes. "You did what?" she said, her voice rising in disbelief. "You manipulated the situation. You took my choice away." "I thought I was protecting you," I said, trying to explain. "You were hurt, and I wanted to make sure you didn't have to deal with someone who could hurt you again. But I needed to make my own choices," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. "You can't just decide who I can be friends with. That's not fair." Her words pierced through me, and I felt the weight of my actions crashing down. I had crossed a line, and now I had to face the consequences. "I know I messed up," I said, my voice breaking. "I just couldn't stand the thought of losing you, and I thought this was the only way to protect what we had." Claire stood up, her expression a mix of anger and disappointment. "You need to understand that I can't be with someone who thinks they can control my life. This isn't just about Mark, it's about trust." I felt my heart sink as her words sank in. The very thing I had tried to protect was now slipping through my fingers. "Claire, please," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. "I love you. I didn't want to lose you." She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Love doesn't mean controlling someone else's choices. I need space to think." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the living room, feeling more isolated than ever. The next few days were filled with an unbearable silence. Claire spent most of her time in the bedroom, and I could hear her muffled sobs through the walls. I wanted to reach out to comfort her, but I couldn't find the words. I had betrayed her trust, and now I was left to confront the reality of what I had done. I spent hours reflecting on my choices. I had acted out of anger and hurt, driven by a desire for revenge. But in doing so, I had hurt the one person I loved most. I realized that my actions had not only cost Mark his place in our lives, but had also created a chasm between Claire and me that felt insurmountable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I decided to take a step toward reconciliation. I needed to show Claire that I was willing to change, to earn back her trust. I began reaching out to the bar owners I had spoken to, asking them to reconsider their decisions regarding Mark. It was a difficult conversation, and I felt the weight of my previous actions bearing down on me. But I was determined to make amends, even if it meant facing the consequences of my own betrayal. After a few days of discussions, I managed to convince one of the bars to lift Mark's ban, explaining that my concerns had been exaggerated and that I had acted out of impulse. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step in the right direction. As I sat in the living room that evening, waiting for Claire to come out, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. I knew that I had a long way to go to earn her trust back, but I was willing to do whatever it took. I wanted her to see that I could change, that I could be the partner she deserved. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, her eyes were red and puffy, but there was a flicker of resolve in her expression. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. I nodded, my heart racing as I prepared to face whatever came next. I knew that the road to healing wouldn't be easy, but it was a journey I was ready to embark on. As Claire sat down across from me, I could see a mixture of emotions playing across her face: pain, anger, but also a glimmer of hope. I knew this conversation could determine the future of our relationship, and I felt the weight of it pressing down on me like a heavy fog. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion, "about everything that happened with Mark and about us." I nodded, my heart racing. "I've been thinking too. I know I messed up, Claire. I let my anger and hurt drive my decisions, and I didn't consider how it would affect you. I'm really sorry." Her gaze softened, but I could still see the hurt lingering in her eyes. "It's not just about the betrayal with Mark. It's about trust. You took away my ability to make my own choices. I felt like I was living in a cage." "I understand," I replied, my voice filled with sincerity. "I was scared of losing you, and I thought that by eliminating Mark from our lives, I could protect what we had. But I see now that I was wrong. I didn't have the right to control your friendships." Claire took a deep breath, and I could see the internal struggle reflected in her expression. "I appreciate you saying that, but it's going to take time for me to process everything. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I know," I said, my heart heavy with regret. "I'm willing to do the work, whatever it takes. I've already spoken to the bar owners and asked them to reconsider Mark's ban. I want to give you the space to make your own choices, even if it means he'll still be around." Her eyes widened in surprise, and for the first time I saw a flicker of hope. "You did that?" "I did," I affirmed, my voice steady. "I don't want you to feel trapped. I want you to feel free to make your own decisions, even if it means you might choose to reconnect with him." Claire's expression softened further, and I could see her processing my words. "That's a big step, and it means a lot to me, but it doesn't change the fact that you hurt me." "I know," I replied, feeling the weight of her pain, "and I want to make amends. I want to show you that I can be better, that I can respect your choices and support you without trying to control you." We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken emotions. I could feel the tension slowly dissipating, replaced by a sense of tentative hope. "I think we need to take things slow," she finally said, her voice softer. "I need time to process everything and figure out what I want." "Of course," I replied, relief flooding through me. "I'll give you all the time you need. I'll be here, ready to support you, no matter what that looks like." As the days turned into weeks, I focused on rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. I made a conscious effort to communicate openly with Claire, ensuring that she felt heard and respected. I encouraged her spend time with her friends, even if it meant seeing Mark again. It was a difficult journey, and there were moments when doubt crept in. I worried that I had lost her forever, but I refused to give up. I was committed to proving that I could be the partner she deserved. Eventually, Claire began to open up again. We shared laughter and light moments, slowly rekindling the connection that had been strained but not entirely broken. It was a slow process, but with each step, I felt a glimmer of hope. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Claire turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, I appreciate how hard you've worked to make things right. I see the effort you're putting in." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I just want you to be happy, Claire. That's all that matters to me." She leaned in closer, resting her head on my shoulder. "I'm still figuring things out, but I think we can work on this together." In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of hope for our future. We had weathered the storm of betrayal, and while the scars would remain, they would serve as a reminder of the strength we could find together. As I wrapped my arm around her, I realized that love is not just about the good times. It's about navigating the complexities of life together. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to walk it, hand in hand with the woman I loved. In the end, I had learned that revenge may bring temporary satisfaction, but it was love, trust, and understanding that would ultimately guide us toward healing. Together, we would face whatever challenges lay ahead, with a renewed commitment to each other and to the truth that had emerged from the ashes of betrayal. And as I looked into Claire's eyes, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. We were on the path to rebuilding, and I was ready for whatever came next.